I'd like to call the Village Board of Trustees meeting to order Monday, September 21st. Due to the state of emergency related to COVID-19, the village will have limited seating at the board meeting. In addition to the board meeting being available on cable channel 980, you're also able to dial in and listen or speak through the telephone. If you would like to call in, please dial 920-322-6120 between 5:45 and 5:55 on the day of the meeting. Audience members are requested to sign in on the sheet provided at the registration table. Citizens wishing to be heard on topics not listed on the agenda may speak under item C. Citizens may be given an opportunity to speak during discussion of items listed on the agenda and are allowed 3 minutes for comments. Disruptive discussion or profanity will not be allowed. Roll call of officers.
Duffy.
Here.
Horning.
Here.
Streeter.
Here.
Price.
Here.
Will.
Stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Citizen participation. Citizens are to address the board only. Statements are limited to 3 minutes. The board may not respond to items not listed on the agenda. However, you may ask for an item to be placed on future agendas. Any citizens wishing to be heard? Seeing none. Moving down to announcements. Does anybody have any announcements? This is an announcement, but I just wanted to thank Chuck and Katie for painting those signs. They look really, really nice. I know we talked about looking into replacing those, but are those in pretty good shape, or?
We had to do a little patching. Some of the wood was rotting out in the back, but I think it's good for a couple of years.
Yeah, they look really nice. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
And the gardens also, thank you for watering and everything this summer also. It looks really nice. President's business and staff reports, Lakeside Municipal Court. Connie?
I'm still busy catching up and got a bunch of trials scheduled for this week and next week. And we have a conditional offer out to a lady that she's actually been a court clerk in Horicon for 17 years, and she knows the computer program. She's got the same program. So she's scheduled to start on or before October 12th. So that's good news.
Great. Anything else? All right, thanks, Connie. Library, Heather?
Thank you. This past week, we started our fall storytime schedule, and so right now it's still taking place through virtually. But we do get quite a few views on Facebook, so the average is 200 to 300 views of the story time, and 37 engagements, which means that they will click on or like it or type a comment in on those posts. So we're also started doing some book bundling, which is kind of putting together some collections for the children. And our curbside's going well. Our appointments are picking up a bit. It kind of varies from day to day, but you know, like today I had 3 appointments that people wanted to come in right at the same time, which hasn't happened before this. So I think they'll be picking up if we have to continue them for a while. At least we're getting people into the library safely and doing that. So that's about all I have for that.
All right, thanks, Heather. Administrator Nick?
Thank you. Similar to the last couple of weeks, just working on budget, getting the budget put together and cleaning up maybe some things that we have discussed in previous meetings and looking into things. I had quite a few meetings last week. I attended the MSAC meeting on Wednesday night. Thursday night, we had our annual OSG meeting at the wastewater treatment plant, which is always a good meeting to attend. This year, they've been working on a master facilities plan for the wastewater treatment plant. They started probably 2 or 3 years ago when the whole phosphorus thing started taking shape. And they presented that the other night. They just kind of finished up that master facilities plan, and it is a very thorough plan. They came up with 18 different options, kind of direction to go from here over the next several years. And then they scored all those options, and they came up basically with 4 or 5 options that seemed to be the best options, and the first 2 or 3 years of all of those options are the same, so they're going to kind of just start with that and see where that takes us. that will mean some expense to our wastewater utility at some point down the line. The next step for us as the OSG is kind of putting together that plan and those financial plans to put numbers to each district. I also attended a TSC meeting last week where we continued to work on the Clearwater Elimination Fund that's in the current agreement. The current wastewater agreement didn't really expire in 2020, but it was a 20-year agreement, so we're sort of modifying some of those things in there for another, hopefully, 20 years. But other than that, it was a pretty busy week, but the budget has been obviously most of my time.
Thanks, Nick.
I just had a question. I just noticed in the notes that Mitch talked about that Brashad Avenue project and that some of the sanitary sewers in poor condition. Is that different than what we were expecting, and is there any additional cost?
No, that's exactly what we were expecting, which is part of the reason why that project is being done. Good question. So that is, we have a number of roads there's streets in the village that had clay sewer. Clay sewers were put in prior to, like, say, 1960s, 1950s. And those sewers, at the time, were great sewers, but they let a lot of leaks in, they cracked, they let roots in, and we're trying to get rid of all clay sewers in the village. Beshot was an old clay sewer that needed to be replaced, and it's actually probably about 8 years past its original plan of replacement. But the water main, the storm sewer, it's all old and terrible in the road base and everything. So no, it was in the condition we expected it to be, but I think his note was maybe more so proving that, yes, it definitely needed to be replaced.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Nick, is that like that's one of our last streets, isn't it? Like our old streets?
Yeah, I think we always feel that way. There's still more old streets, like as far as the large, big ones, even Beshad's really not a real big one. Wisconsin, Indiana, Illinois, those projects were really big projects. Beshad's not quite as large as those. So as far as, I won't say that it's one of our last ones, but it's definitely probably one of the last larger ones.
Yeah, I talked to Mitch a little bit today about that, and he was explaining to me, like, those clay ones, like on Beshad, that are falling apart. There was a period, like, between, like, I don't know, like the 50s and the 70s that they used, like, a type of clay or whatever. It isn't as good as the PVC, but kind of, so some of that stuff, they're just trying to shore that up,
Yeah,
so. But
they went
the
from, like,
system's gonna be a lot better.
that clay, and then they went into some other materials that didn't work out very well either, but then there was a lot of cast iron being used and concrete. There was a lot of concrete being used. Now, pretty much everything is PVC now, and it never, plastic never rots, so it's there for good.
Okay. All right, thanks, Nick. Any other questions for Nick? Police Department, Darren.
Thank you. Just a couple of things. We've had a number of reports of illegal dumping throughout the village. So we have implemented some extra patrols and have installed some cameras in various locations to try to identify the person or persons responsible for that, so we can put a stop to it. You probably saw over the weekend news reports about thefts and tampering of political signs, and unfortunately we've seen our share of that as well. So again, we have extra patrols and cameras out, and I would caution anybody, whether you think it's a joke or not, the consequences for that can be serious, depending on whether or not the district attorney decides that it's something that they want to pursue. And even if they don't, the fines for theft of somebody's sign aren't worth the money that you're going to pay in municipal court. So lastly, I just wanted to acknowledge Saturday was Thank a Police Officer Day, and today we had representatives from the Fond du Lac County Communications Center, the dispatch center, stopped down and dropped off subs and chips and cookies. We had Danielle Miller, a resident in town, stop by, and on behalf of her family, as well as the ARC Special Olympics athletes, dropped off some goodie bags for us. Obviously, we like the food, but the support and generosity of this community is second to none. In light of everything that's going on, not only across the state, but across our country, people here have been overwhelmingly supportive, and we truly appreciate it and are grateful for that. So that's all I have.
Thanks. Hey, Darren, real quick question for you. When you're talking about illegal dumping, are you talking about like the legal use of like business dumpsters, apartment dumpsters, the
Oh,
dumpsters at the Village Park,
and
is
just
that,
dumping it roadside.
Really?
Yeah. So
Okay.
we've had several incidents where they've been dumping stuff in dumpsters, in private dumpsters. We actually had a couple of incidents where people were dumping stuff in the Village Park dumpsters, which granted they're publicly utilized dumpsters. They're not meant for people to be dumping construction materials. So we, actually, I think those dumpsters are gone now. I think they've been removed for the season, so that'll hopefully help eliminate that. But we've also had them just dumping in parking lots and on the roads. The roads actually just started on Winnebago Street and then continued out into the county. So it's not necessarily just specific to North Fond du Lac, but it's something that we've been dealing with.
is that something like new within the last few months?
Probably the last 2, maybe 3 weeks.
Oh, well, okay. All right, thank you. Mike, did you have something, or? Oh, okay. All right, thanks, Darren. Fire EMS, Jake?
Thank you. Like Nick had said, we met Wednesday with MSAC. Adam and I attended that meeting. Majority of the discussion was about the budget for not only this year, but next year. The guys tonight are out in El Dorado doing a joint extrication training. We set that up last week as the number of motor vehicle accidents that we've seen on 41 have increased. So we thought it was a good time to get their hands on our new equipment that we got this year and get some training in. I also met last Friday with Chief Saul, the Ripon Area Fire District Chief, and we discussed the joint training that's going to take place in October. That we'll be able to go there and do live burn training, and then he's going to send crews here to go through extrication as well. That's all I have.
All right, thanks, Jake. Public Works, Darren?
All right, thank you, Mike. Just a couple things. Public Works crew, been pretty busy. We've been working on cleaning up some areas where we've had some main breaks over the summer. We got some of the concrete work done. We'll be doing some of the asphalt work in the next couple of weeks. Crew last week re-shingled the concession stand roof in Village Park. That was due. The shingles were in pretty rough shape on that building. You'll notice that some work has been done to the reservoir at well number 4. Spies has been in and they blasted the whole reservoir. They have the 3 coats of paint on the walls completed, and they have 2 coats of epoxy on the roof. We have 1 more coat of a sealant to go on the roof section. That has to be so many days after the epoxy was applied. And then I've been busy dealing with some DNR issues. With the new DNR rep we have, he's not overly joyed with some of our sample sites we use for some of our sampling of the water utility. So I'm working with him on getting new sites set up for that.
Thanks, Darren. All right, moving down to the consent agenda. Approve the minutes of the following village board meeting from August 31st, and approve notices and authorized checks to be drawn on the respective funds as indicated. So this one is from the board meeting for checks for September 8th. General Fund, $72,472.91. Library Fund, $577.18. EMS Fund, $376.66. Capital Projects, $2,747.43. Water Department, $6,303.32. Wastewater Department, $2,014.44. Stormwater Fund, $11,574.93. Community Development Authority TIF, $16.70 for a grand total of $96,083.57. These checks are from, for this meeting for the 21st of September. General Fund, $62,541.73. Library Fund, $42.45. EMS Fund, $3,484.87. Capital Projects, $5,597. Wastewater Department, $7,075.03. Wastewater Department, $3,682.75. Stormwater Fund, $208.37 for a grand total of $82,632.20. Also approved the following operator's license for Jackie DeClue for Dollar General and Ashley Ernst for Charlie's Permanent. What is the board's pleasure?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as read.
I got a second?
I'll second that motion.
Got a motion by Will, second by Price to approve the consent agenda as read. Are there any questions on the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. All right, moving down to administrative discussion and possible action on approving the following licenses for September 25th, 2020 to June 30th, 2021. Class B fermented malt beverage and intoxicating liquor licenses, non-intoxicating beverage license, and dance hall license. Business Charlie's Banquet Hall and Pub for Daniel Ernst. What is the board's pleasure?
I'll make a motion to approve the licensing.
Second.
Got a motion by Chuck, second by John to approve the licensing from September 25th through June 30th. For June 30th for 2021. Any questions on this one? All right, seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Number 2, discussion and possible action on 2021 library, municipal court, and EMS budgets.
All right, I think Connie had, if you don't mind, I had library listed first, but I think I'm gonna have court go first. So we'll just start with the municipal court, then we'll do library, and then we'll go back to the EMS from our discussions last week. Municipal court budget, I will start out with, I had handed out a sheet that was sitting on your desk of, it says fines and forfeitures, penalties. It's about half a page. This is the revenue side of the court system that is, this part is in a different section of our budget than the revenues tab, which we'll get to later on, but this is obviously important to this portion. So this year, we budgeted $325,000. So if you look at this, does everybody have the document? Okay. If you look at this, you can see all the different jurisdictions that are listed there, and those are each, at the end of the year, the actual money that's the revenue that's generated by each district gets put into those, but we don't budget it that way. We budget it as a whole number with the municipal court up on top. And the reason for that is, there's a couple reasons for it, but the way that works is all of the money comes in and out through that one account. And that's why you'll see, like right now, if you look at municipal court, the second line, and current actual, it says negative $31,000. That's because that money comes in and then we pay them. So we collect all the money and then we end up paying those jurisdictions back for their share of that fine, so to speak. So it's extremely hard to pinpoint the budget numbers in the middle of the year. You have to time it just right when we've collected everything for that month, and we've also made the payments back to them for that month, because if you catch it in between that, your numbers are skewed. So with that being said, Chris spent a lot of time looking at this, I spent some time looking at this, and we feel pretty confident that this year, instead of the 352 for total revenue, we're gonna be around 292, and I would say that's pretty conservative. Connie, I've talked to Connie about this, and a lot of the jurisdictions are writing a lot of tickets now because they didn't write a lot of tickets for a long time because of the COVID when it first started. So, plus there could be some large SDC state debt collection charges that will get pulled in. So I think the 292 would be the safe low end of that. It would probably bump up a little bit, I would guess. So you can see we budgeted 352. So we're, at this point, we're about $60,000 short for 2020, which we expected. I mean, we expected when COVID started, there was nobody writing tickets at the time. So I don't think that's too bad compared to what it could have been, but I think we're going to be in good shape. And I think that number will creep up a little bit by the end of the year. Next year, we're budgeting the exact same thing. I think 352. If you look back to 2019 actual, it was at 340. We felt that we should have budgeted 352 this year. Obviously, we had some different circumstances, but we feel next year 352 is a good number. So that's just the revenue side of things, and I just wanted to touch that first, and then I'll turn it over to Connie once we get into the main court. We can have Chris chime in about the wages if we want.
Nick, but can I ask one question?
I have a
about
question
that?
too.
About that.
John? Oh, sorry, who was first?
The $60,000, that shortfall that's gonna potentially be, or pretty close to it, how's that made up?
So that's a larger discussion, right? So the way the court works is it's general fund revenue, okay? So our general fund revenue is 3.5 million. This is just a portion of it, okay? There's other areas in our government that have saved significant amounts of money, and once we get into their budget, their expense budget will be at 205 for this year. So the 292 is the revenue, their expense budget's 205. So it's exceeding their expenses, and it normally does. But, so then you look at the rest of that as this sort of general fund, it's a complete village-wide general fund bucket, so to speak. So that discussion would kind of happen, I guess, throughout the rest of the budget process when we get into the revenue side of it. But there is, I will tell you right now, I've looked at the revenue and expenses as a whole as much as I can, because right now we don't have some of those numbers. Because we haven't gotten them from the state yet, but it looks like it's gonna be pretty close to, we'll be in good shape. Because there was a lot of savings from the pool, because we didn't open the pool this year. So that makes up, there's like $84,000 of savings there. Not truly net savings, because there was not expenses, or I'm sorry, not revenue besides. So how that gets made up is really a discussion for the larger revenue.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Mike?
That was a long-winded answer, sorry.
Question on the revenue side, so all that money, like that 292,050, whatever, that's our part of that, our share of all the fines and all that stuff?
Yeah, the $33, is it $33?
That what adds up to be that, okay.
Citation, yeah, so you divide that.
That's after the-
Roughly that 265, if you took the $265,000 portion of it, you
Mhm.
divided that by 33, that would be the number of citations,
Okay,
right? Yeah.
okay, perfect, thanks.
Anybody else?
Chris, do you have anything to add to that discussion? Gene?
No, but I would just point out too, we budgeted 352 for the year, and our estimated is, only gonna be, or, in the expenses, I'm sorry. We had budgeted 261, we're only looking at 205.
Yes.
So we basically make up the difference in the lost revenue right there, just
Okay.
because.
Most of it, yeah, good point, yeah, I forgot to mention that. So it's about 36,000, or 40, I'm sorry, 56,000 there, so yeah, you're right, it's almost all of it. Good point. All right, no more questions on the revenue then? All right, moving on, so then, moving on to the court budget, which would be your tab 2. Full-time wages, Chris does most of the wage stuff, so full-time wages are slightly under what was budgeted. Part-time wages are significantly under what was budgeted. If you recall, last year, we budgeted for 2 full-time people and 1 part-time person. We ended up never hiring the part-time. We decided to move forward with 2 full-time people, and we haven't really been at full staff for those 2 full-time people for much of the short term, I guess, the last few months here. It's been on and off, but that's why the part-time wages in general are so much lower, because we actually never filled that one position. So going forward, you'll see that we're not even budgeting for that position anymore. So that's why you'll see next year's $47,000 for part-time wages, which is the judge. The 101 would be the full-time for next year with the 1.5% increase. And then overtime is very limited for the most part. There's only $50 spent this year, so it's a very small number. And then the rest of those, FICA, retirement, health insurance, dental, general, life, longevity, all those, all the way down to IT network, are pretty much built off whatever they are.
Can I just ask a
Yep.
question? Is
Right.
they're inflated a little bit just in case you hire probably a
Correct.
family member?
Yep,
You
so
inflated-
we had made the assumption, Chris can answer that question, with the health insurance is what you're asking about.
All of them, they're all kind of up just because of, I'm not sure in the past, the previous employee had a family plan.
Yeah, so, well, they're not, I mean, the health insurance, yes, we're just assuming the
With
worst
dental's
case
up-
scenario, so to speak, in the family
Yep.
plan, and we didn't have that in the past. Correct.
The dental's up 39 and
Yep, and
life
that,
insurance, yep.
if you look at the numbers, it's because we're assuming,
Yep,
yeah. Yes. We previously had someone that was not taking it.
Mhm.
So that makes a difference, yep. Good question. Any questions up to that point? And then I'll get into IT, and then I'll turn it over mostly to Connie.
There was something with the, okay.
No?
No, I thought there was something with the phone, but this one here, maybe it was a different one.
Telephone, yeah, it's down here. We're not there yet.
Okay, all right.
IT network would be the next one. That one, if you recall, we had kind of overspent that in all of them because we didn't do the server project the year before, so everybody's IT project budgets are overspent this year. However, this one's not overspent as much because we had planned on replacing 3 PCs this year in the court office, so that absorbed some of that because we never did. And at this point in the year, we're just gonna wait till next year, so I put it in next year's budget. So that's why you'll see that 7,800, and then after that, it should drop off. If you look at the details, I tried to spell that out a little bit more so for myself too, just to keep track of what's all getting spent there, so. Those are there's 4 basically bills that are going in there, quarterly or monthly, and then there's the 3 PC replacements. And then with that, I will turn it over to Connie to talk about, starting with general office.
General office, we basically just left the same. We do still have some supplies that I have to get for this year yet. But basically, that's the same as it has been. Printing, I'm planning on, we've got to redo a lot of the forms, seeing as how we've got the 3 new jurisdictions. So I'm gonna be doing that this year yet, so printing will go down about 300 for next year. And I don't do postage or telephone.
Yeah, so the postage, Chris, I think you pulled that, right? You pulled the postage currently, and then you looked at some historical data.
Right.
So that number's a little bit of a guessing game. The way the postage works, again, just to reiterate, is all the postage gets charged at one account in the general fund. At the end of the year, it's trued up, so to speak, before the auditors show up. Telephone, I do that one too. Again, that one's pretty close to, that one's real close, so not much for change there.
Is that for cell phones, or that just for the
No,
phone
that's
charge?
the ShoreTel system and the
Okay.
AT&T. There's no cell phones there, no.
Okay.
And then that would be dues and subscriptions, Connie?
The reason that it's higher is I think I coded the judge's continuing education under 307, and it was supposed to be under 306. So that's the only difference for that one. The other thing under there,
And in the future, just to reiterate, the court training, it's $700 in there next year also, which is why the large increase, because it wasn't budgeted in there last year.
right. And then we also are not gonna be having the online classes. I'm in level, or tier 5, and they only have the online classes for tiers 2 and 3. So I took those out because we don't have them. Training. I don't think there was.
That's where we added that 700. I was ahead of myself.
Yeah,
Right,
okay.
yeah, for next year.
Then travel mileage. Went down, we just put it down. We don't foresee having going to a lot of seminars next year, because a lot of them, we're guessing, are gonna be on Zoom. So there'll be less travel for that. Employee hiring, hopefully we don't have to do anything like that again. Uniforms, there's gonna be just 2 full-time. Small tools, just for miscellaneous. And then the last one is for the computer software. Annual support fee. And that's up a little bit because of, again, because of the 3 jurisdictions that came on.
Is that a good number there for like the 2020 estimate, 1,600?
No. That's why I was confused before when I came up with $56,000 because I knew it wasn't that much. That's supposed to be 16,000.
Yeah.
I think, well, no, that's definitely not a good number. It's obviously gonna be over 16 too.
It's like 16,394 is what the total shows in the,
That's for next year, yeah.
Next year, but-
It's probably gonna be 16,201.
okay.
16,201, so that changes that bottom number, because I knew that 56, that caught me by surprise, Chris, when it came out to $56,000, it was more like 46, so that makes sense, there's $10,000, so good catch. We'll change that. Does that make sense? Everybody following that? So it'll be 215, 136 approximately.
Anybody have any questions for Connie on the court system, on the court stuff? No? All right.
Thanks, Connie.
Thanks, Connie.
Thank you.
One thing we could mention is that you were talking about citations before, Nick. This year, at present, we are just 180 short of where we were at this time last year. So it's an amazing comeback on part of a few departments in particular.
Yeah.
No names mentioned.
All right, you can head out, Connie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on, library next, Nick, is?
Yeah.
Already?
Yep, so, I could just start out so the property tax, I just started that out, I put that in there at 1.5% increase. We had kind of talked about doing that across the board with most departments, about that's kind of our goal. So I increased the property tax from the village 1.5%. That's just our starting point for discussion, I guess. If the board doesn't agree with that or wants to discuss that more, we can talk about that. The rest of this stuff, the county, we're expecting the same funding. There's, you're gonna ask why its current actual is higher. There is some money that got coded in there should be going somewhere else. We gotta take it back out of there. So 64,982 is the county aid. And Heather, remind me, where does that other revenue go? Miscellaneous?
Yeah, it comes from outside other counties, so other counties. So that will go for like Calumet County or Winnebago County. If that's coming from outside of the Fond du Lac County, then it's a different revenue stream, so.
And then the rest of the revenues, Heather, if you maybe want to go over the fines from there down.
Yeah, I don't know if I have the right sheet.
Oh.
Do you have an extra one?
I do.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay. All right, so, just, I think we estimated 1,500, which may be high, especially considering what's been happening with our fines, our ability to collect fines. We've started collecting fines again, so we're optimistic about that. Copies too, we're pretty low this year. So everything, I hope you don't look too strongly at the numbers for this year, because hopefully next year they'll look better than they do this year, just because of the circumstances of not being able to be fully open. Yeah, lost items. The investment interest, I think, yeah, we talked about that probably being higher, being that $1,200 or close to it for revenue there. So that will get.
Well, no, you had asked about that, but we're seeing in our other interest accounts that interest is
Oh, that's right.
much
That's right.
significantly reduced. So
That's
rather
right.
than, we budgeted 90, and we're not quite sure how we budgeted 90. Maybe Chris can shed light on that, but we're not quite sure why the budget said 90. But last year, you see, we collected $1,200. Our other revenue accounts and our other investment interest revenue accounts for the general fund we're seeing some significant decreases in those. So we suspect it's gonna be maybe in that 400 range.
So the miscellaneous, that would be the out of area. That's where that should be recorded. And then library donations, we usually get a donation from the Optimists, and that's where that is. And we use that for the books for Santa Night. So that shows up there. Do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, I could talk,
Okay.
let me just mention, I just want to make sure everybody is understanding the library fund balance. So what we're doing there is the use of library fund balance is whatever this budget is short, so to speak, of breaking even, we're plugging in that use of library fund balance to balance this budget. So as you see, last year we budgeted 8362 to balance the budget. We're not proposing we use any of that at this point. Our estimated actuals are showing that they're not gonna end up using any of that fund balance, and in fact, they're gonna be plus a little bit at the end. To balance the budget for next year, we're plugging in 9230 for use of their fund balance to balance this budget. And then, moving down into full-time, like I said, full-time through really property insurance. I mean, those numbers are just, are what they are for the existing wages and the 1.5% increase that we talked about. Keeping everything the same, that's where that ends up. Chris, do you have anything to add there?
Nope. Life insurance numbers, as you can see, the older we get, the higher the cost. So I don't know if you guys noticed that on some of the life insurance numbers. It's such a small dollar amount, but the percentage looks big.
Heather, are there like any plans for like, as far as like part-time wages go, like if the COVID situation doesn't get any better next year and you don't see the amount of patrons coming back, is there any plans on how you handle the part-time wage if you know the business doesn't bounce back, or we just, is it just kind of go as we see as we go, or?
I guess I'm hoping not to have this go on forever. If it would happen to go on forever, I guess we'd have to look at options at that point, but
Okay,
I guess
thanks.
hoping that doesn't happen.
Yeah, all of us, of course.
The phone, this is the one I was looking at, the phone.
Yeah, we'll get there,
Phone.
Mike.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah, is there any, I guess, I don't mean to interrupt you, but is there any
No,
questions
sorry.
up to the property insurance then, part? Because then if not, we'll move on to general office and then I'll have Heather take over there.
Okay. So we basically kept everything consistent. We did, in 2019, we did usually spend out our budget for the lines that I'm responsible for. So that would be the office materials, little bit in postage. We send thank you notes out. Community relations, that would be programming, and we're still spending on programming right now, not quite as much as usual, but I'll get to that when we go through a few other things with my presentation. But we still put together crafts and stuff for kids for make and take and stuff like that. So like I said, hopefully this next, as we go into 2021, hopefully COVID won't be affecting what we're doing as far as programming goes, because we really look forward to that. So let's see. So that's the community relations budget. And then telephone, you were talking.
So, yeah, Mike, your 162% increase there, it's a small amount, but I'll take the blame for last year under budgeting that, because you can see in 2019 it was $283 for the year, and I only budgeted $193 there.
Yep.
And then additionally, AT&T changed all of their plans this year, and in fact, we got a bill one month, it was it's normally like a $400 bill, and one month we got a bill for like $1,500, and we called them, and they changed all their plans. We negotiated it back down significantly, but it is a little bit higher than it was. So now we're looking at $42 a month, I believe, for the library, and that's what that works out to be, $42.25 a month.
It's just a landline, right? It's not a cell phone?
Just a landline,
Yep.
correct, yep.
Does have a fax line too
Yep.
at the library.
Capable, yep.
So, yeah. The library dues and subscriptions, that's mainly our cost for being involved with the system. Training and conference this year, I doubt we will have the WLA, which is the Wisconsin Library Association Conference. which that's where that cost is, and I have things that I could turn in that I have not, so that's why that line hasn't been spent out, but it could be easily spent out if everything was turned in for that conference. So nothing on hiring. Hopefully we won't have to do anything with that. The tools and equipment, so just an example of that, I had to buy a webcam. We're doing a lot of virtual meetings, and in order for me to participate so that they can hear instead of me just typing into the computer as we're doing the meeting, it just makes it a lot easier for people as I'm participating with that. So that would be an example of, you know, something that would be under small tools and equipment.
John? John had a question.
Oh, sure.
One of my things from years past and still continues is miscellaneous and not really labeling what they're for. I mean, you just gave the example of what it's for, and it makes sense. To me, miscellaneous is just, well, I have something extra if something comes up. If there's something earmarked, I'm okay with that. It sounds like that, but to me, just having miscellaneous just seems that you're going on, there's gotta be a purpose for it. You just can't say, well, I need $2,000 and then you don't use it. I'd much rather see it written out saying camera, phone, whatever it may be. Be more specific. Besides, that's just my view. I don't know how other board members feel, but miscellaneous.
I agree. We're trying to clean that stuff up. I must have missed this one, and some of the other, I just worked with Darren today about, Darren Parsons, about trying to list those things, and not necessarily that we're gonna have every dollar, but at least there's some examples in there, right? So Heather and I can work on that.
Sure.
Ann, did you have a question?
Is that something we could use that, money that we talked about for the intercom for? If she needs a webcam then
Yep.
COVID, maybe
Yep.
that's something we could get that covered.
Yep, I did, I sent
sent
him
it.
that. Yep,
Yeah.
yep. So we talked about that,
So yeah, there is, I mean, some of that will be covered, but it's still expense.
Mhm. Maintenance, repair of the office, you know, depending what breaks, and so that's in there, if something needs repair, so. Library materials, that's really the main, that's one of our mission is to, you know, supply residents with print and non-print materials, and that includes both e-resources and print resources for the library. So that's basically my budget in a nutshell. Besides the facilities portion, so.
So all in all, you can see the expense total is an increase of 1.5%, which is right where we're targeting, trying to target, and that would, 2020, here's where it shows there were $5,000 under budget, so to speak, in the black, and that included actually another 9,000 or 8,000 something that they would have had to use at a fund balance. So really, it's like $14,000 that they were under budget. And then next year, with using the 9,000 in fund balance, it balances that budget.
Yeah.
I know the county had sort of increased their, did we get that number from the county yet?
As far as funding?
Yeah.
I have not received final word, but it's, based on the numbers, hopefully we will receive that 64,982 again for next year, so.
Any other questions for Heather? All right. All right, thank you, Heather.
Yep.
Did you want to go over the presentation?
Well, I mean, there's really not, there's not a lot of changes, so I can just, you know how to read it, and then there's not a lot of changes, but just showing that we still put together a summer reading program. Our numbers of kids that were signed up is lower. In the back of the folder, there is also a sheet that kind of shows how many craft kits were put together and some other details on the program. And just kind of showing that even in COVID, we are busy doing a lot of things that we weren't able to do before. We kind of operated understaffed, and that can be shown in slide 22. It shows, you know, that we are falling under the state average and what they kind of are looking for our size community. So we're still below that, but we're working our way up as far as funding goes and staffing. Hopefully we can keep the staffing level. We're getting things done that needed to be done, but you can still operate the library, but it's going to be a lot. I think we'll be more ready for patrons when they come in. We've undertaken an extensive weeding project, so we've basically analyzed 25,000 items, and there's a lot that goes into what you do with those items. So just know that we're not, if we have time, we're definitely still busy doing things that needed to be done that just kind of got brushed over before. The next thing is paperwork in the office and going through files. So that will be our next project if we get the time. So other than that, I don't think there's anything. Just showing that our hours have now increased to the point where we're actually, they're 45 hours instead of, our usual was 41 to 44. And so we're available to the community now, Thursday nights, Saturdays, and every day 9 to 5. So I think that's about it. And thank you for all the, funding you've provided to the library for 115 years. We're celebrating it this month. So that's all I got.
Thank you, Heather.
Thanks, Heather.
Okay.
All right. Ready to move on to EMS? All right.
As long as there's no more questions about library.
And any other questions wrapping up the library?
Sorry about that.
Does that mean we get a break?
Oh, we're good. Thank you.
Heather.
Thanks, Heather. Have a good night. All right. Moving on to EMS. Jake's up.
I guess I could start with I'll talk about the charges if you don't mind, Jake.
Yeah, that's fine.
Run through that a little bit. I've handed
Yes.
out a sheet to the board members. Very simple little sheet that doesn't, I just wrote EMS on the top of it. So last we talked and we went back to looking at the budget, and Jake will go over what he did in the budget, and well, what we discovered going through that is I started looking at the numbers I'd look at more so, and I looked at the charges, or the uncollectible portion of that number, and if you looked at your original packet you had, it says 46% in parentheses. That was incorrect. It was not 46% on that sheet you had. First of all, it was actually 56% if you did the calculation. And so we corrected that for one, to make sure that reflected the right number. But secondly, when I looked at the calculation and saw it was 56%, I started looking into that a little bit more, because my recollection is it's always been around 46 to 50%. So in looking at it, it looks like the 56% was definitely higher than it should have been. So what I did is I looked back the last 3 years of data, and that's what you have in front of you. So in 2017, the percent that uncollectible was of the charges was 47%. That's the audited number. In 2018, it was 58%. That was an unusual year a little bit, but what I'm going to tell you about in 2019, it's 52%. And what the auditors started doing in 2019, that this just passed audit, and what they haven't been doing in the past is taking some of that uncollectible at the end of the year and booking it back, so to speak. So there's a large number of uncollectible at the end of the year, but they're taking a percentage of that now and saying, you're actually going to collect this revenue, we're going to put it back in the year. So 2019, that's what they did. They put $25,000 of revenue back in. So when you do that, obviously that reduces that percentage of uncollectible as the audited number. So it works out actually, if you take the 3-year average, it's also 52%. So the 3-year average is 52%, along with last year was 52%. I feel like that number could go slightly lower than 52%, but to be safe, we put it in at 52%, and guess what? It fixed it. The other thing that it also made up, I just want to point out 2 things. If you have both budgets in front of you, if you look at the very top of the original budget you were given, and it says 1255,775 for total revenue, that was, if you take a calculator and add those numbers up, we found an error in there, and it was actually $10,000 less than that. It was $1,245,000, which made it, if you recall before, we were at a $21,000 deficit. That changed it to a $31,000 deficit. So that was the first thing we found. So we thought, oh great, this is a good start. But then after fixing that, it still made that up. So that 52 to 56% swing is a big difference. So if you look now, the proposed budget has $4,615 of revenue built into it. That's the change I was involved in. Jake also did some changes. If there's any questions about that process, I guess
The only thing I'll add is when we kind of found that is I took a year to date on where we were at for the uncollectible, and that's where I came up with the 56%. And when Nick had started looking back, and then we sat down and discussed it, typically at this point of the year it is 56 to 60% roughly, and then once we get you know, that extra money that the auditors inject into the budget for the previous year, as well as receiving more payments from previous billing from January 1st until the end of the year, that's where that number kind of levels out. That's the only thing I really wanted to add, just so you know where I got the 56 originally from, 56%. There's also additional revenue that should be going in there from the CARES Act for this year that we have applied for and are waiting for the second payment now, which should be roughly $6,100. So it should take our deficit from that 19 down to 13.
You had mentioned the second payment, or you already got a payment from them?
Yep, we took in one payment of $4,400, I believe, and then the second one will be $1,700.
Where is that?
It's
where's
not reflected in here.
It's not reflected into the revenue for,
It will be. Chris, do you know where you'll put that?
Probably the state of Wisconsin, other grants possibly,
Okay.
or it could be a special state grant. I'll have to look at the financials here for
Okay, all right.
so it'll be another 10 grand, probably 10.5.
What month did that come in, George?
Last month maybe? I'd have to look at my
So
emails.
August, so yeah, that would
Yeah.
be reflected if there was a journal entry.
No, I looked in the accounts and I couldn't
so
find
we will
anything.
actually have
It's
an
not.
additional
Yep.
Yep.
Nick,
Chuck, you have a question?
I think you gained a couple thousand in the Fonda County ambulance?
For next year?
Yeah.
Yep, it's 5%. So the numbers in that were incorrect in the current, I believe. So it's 5% from the 44,493. So the change in the budget is reflected from 2019 is what
Yes.
I'm seeing.
Yeah, you're correct. You're right,
Which is why
Chuck,
it's
we didn't have that in the
10%.
first rendition of this. We overlooked that. There was a 5% increase for 2019 and we never captured it.
I see.
So is there any questions about that discussion? And then Jake has a few things he went through, line items that he wants to discuss. Just show.
Yeah, so I was able to trim some money out, essentially an average of what we pay for in laundry service. So that number shrunk a little bit. Community relations, the majority of our open houses and tours deal with the fire department as well. And for the last several years, the fire department has paid for those. And there's a little bit of money for EMS week in there, as well as some public education that I left in there. Hiring, I'm hoping next year we don't have a large slew of hiring, so we took that down a little bit. Awards and recognition, there are very few paid on call EMTs that would come from, which is why that went down a little bit. Materials is a tricky thing to estimate based off of what the cost of healthcare supplies are. But I think that's a good number to have in there, just based off of this year and then the last couple of years. Small tools and equipment, I eliminated some of the dollar amount in that as well. And then the last thing was the uncollectible.
I think collectively that Jake's line item changes was about a little over $2,000.
Yeah,
And
it's just
then
over 2,000, yeah.
The big change was in the revenue.
John, do you have a question?
Yeah, just to point out, I met with Jake and discussed some of the things. He did a great job, with Nick, getting this to where it needed to be, and the plus side, obviously we know it's it's a needed service. One thing, Jake, if you want to touch base about contracted collections, well, you're gonna have that discussion with them.
Yep.
That could potentially lead to some savings to us. If you-
Yeah, so our contracted collection services, which is account 250, that is LifeQuest. And, you know, after meeting with Trustee Duffy, and I've talked to Nick about it extensively about our billing service and what they charge us percentage-wise for the cost for billing and what they collect. We have started the process of looking into different billing companies to see what a fair percentage is. What the goal is to get 5 or 6 different billing companies together, or the paperwork together, and then lay them out and kind of get a feel for what the right percentages would be. And what we're paying them. The tricky thing is getting a billing company that supports and has the laws and whatnot of Wisconsin. There are 3 services in Wisconsin that obviously know what the laws and everything are and have the ability to do the TRIP program, so on and so forth. And there's others in the country. It's just finding what fits best for us and making sure that they're able to fill our needs.
Mike, do you have a question?
I just follow up, I had that kind of the same question as that contracted collection. It was like 2 or 3 years ago, maybe even 4 years ago, you looked at another service to help us collect unpaid invoices or unpaid.
Yeah, so.
What happened? Are we still doing that?
Yep.
Are we paying for that service?
No, so MTM, I believe, is maybe what you're referring to, the collection service that deals with Medicaid. So that's a service that's provided by the state, and it ensures that if a patient wants to be transported or we provide on-scene care, that bill's paid for, or some of it's paid for. So what happens with that is we get information, obviously, from the demographics from the patient, send it off to our billing company. They contact us and say this is MTM, and then we're able to get more information essentially to our billing company, and then they take their cut still, but MTM doesn't charge anything further, if that makes sense.
Has it been profitable to us? Has it been beneficial?
Not yet. So the process was lengthy. So 3 years ago, I believe, and Trustee Horning could probably speak to that. We started that process a long time ago. It was 2016 or 2017, and finally completed it in the last, I'd say, 3-4 months. There was a lot of turnover in the person's position, which caused quite a few problems, and a lot of the paperwork was kind of discarded, I guess, for lack of a better term. So we ended up going straight through our billing company, and they reached out to MTM to get it done. So we'll see probably in the next 2 years. You know, it's going to take some time because it's not a big dollar amount that we're going to see a difference in. But over the next 2 years, I'd say you'd start seeing a difference in revenue.
Okay, my second question was on the uncollectibles. You had that 46% there, is that wrong?
On the old one,
Oh, excuse me, you're right. You're right.
that was wrong.
It was wrong. I looked at the wrong one. You're right. I missed that. Okay, and then I'd just like to thank you for trimming your budget. I know it wasn't a ton of money, but it was still, every little bit helps. And thank
Yeah,
you.
definitely.
I'm good.
Thank you.
Anybody have any other questions for Jake?
We're comfortable then now with the EMS. We don't need to go back to look at that at all as far as anymore.
I have a question.
Mike?
MSAC, what did they have, any comments or?
Yeah,
Discussion, yeah.
their biggest thing was the per capita raise, and there wasn't a real long discussion about it, but it was brought up and was asked if if that could be changed in any aspect. I mean, other than that, we discussed more or so at length the expenses and why it adds up to such a high dollar amount. but
They wanted to change the one we're proposing for 3% here?
To $3.
$3, yes.
They asked if we could consider $2. I responded to that saying I could certainly talk to our board about it, but we did talk about it at length, and that we looked at more than, I explained to them how we looked, Jake and I put together a 7 or 8 or 10-year plan, and how this was just one step. I explained that, and that, we weren't expecting to do, if we wanted to make it all up in 1 year, and it would be $10 or $15. And I also explained to them that, the village is holding debt right now that is owed by them, and so to speak. It's part, it's not fair that we hold all that expense. So I think after that discussion, I think it was, I don't think anybody's really excited about it, obviously, but at the same time, I think they're accepting of it.
Were most of the town chairs there? Or?
No, but we had three.
yeah,
Four.
which is typical.
Yeah.
How many are there altogether
3.
again?
Yeah, there were 3 there, and we have 5.
So we're missing 2. I guess it's
Lambertine,
more than half.
Van Dyne, El Dorado, Town, Lambertine.
Who were the 3 were there? What were the?
El Dorado.
Lambertine, El Dorado, and Friendship. Yep.
All right. Any other questions for Jake? All right. Anything else to add, Nick, or?
I have nothing else to add.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Cool, thanks, Jake. Thanks,
you.
Nick. All right.
Stick around then for this next discussion too, please.
All right, so we're gonna move down to number 3, discussion and possible action on municipal door entry and intercom system.
All right, I can take that. So you're all aware of what we're doing in the front door right now with an intercom I purchased off of Amazon. It was $70. It works, and it works. I thought it was short-term when we put it up. It obviously hasn't been short-term, and we had to buy another one about 2 or 3 weeks ago because the first one didn't work anymore. The second one's now starting to act up. For $70, you don't get much of a warranty. But, I didn't want to spend a lot of money either because it was temporary. But it was covered by the COVID grant that we got, the Routes to Recovery. With that being said, with the problems we're having, and knowing that the Routes to Recovery grant would likely cover something like that, I had Darren from Public Works take a look at a more robust system. So my intentions were to look at the front door and maybe the other entry door that the employees use as an intercom, like you would see it normally at like a school or something, where it's a a fixed thing on the wall. You press the button and you can talk. This one would also have video you could talk to. And at this point, it's becoming an issue from an ADA standpoint. The one we have right now, basically what we do is we leave the door unlocked, but you have to turn the handle to come in, which forces us to take or turn off the ADA buttons because it can't open because it's latched. So that has become an issue. We've had people that are on crutches and wheelchairs that are trying to get in the building, and we have to go out there and help them because they press the button, doesn't work. So that's one major issue that I wanted to deal with in looking at this. So you're able to connect all that stuff together. So the door can still be locked, and you can still use that button once somebody hits the intercom button and you talk to somebody at our office. They would press a button, it would unlock the door, and at that point they would be able to press the handicap button and open the door. So that all can be wrapped together, and that, if you look at the quotation that's attached, that's that $3,400 for the main entrance. That also includes kind of the meat and potatoes of the system, so to speak, because the system is integrated into the server. So that's the initial upfront cost to do the front door, which would include the intercom, the video intercom, the push button to allow the door to unlock, along with putting that mechanism out there, and the system, which also includes key fobs for entrance for employees. When we're looking at that, then I also looked at the back door here that we use from the parking lot for most employees, but not a lot of the employees don't use that either. And that's, if you look at the second part of that, there's 2 more quotes. One's $1,800. I'm missing the other one. Where did it go, Darren? $1,488. $1,488. Is it on here?
Yeah, it's in the
All right.
packet.
Sorry, I'm not seeing it. $1,488 was so the $1,800 option would also include that remote access from the front desk, which we don't need at that door. So that $1,400 would add that, would just be key fob access. And as I was looking into this, there's also been discussion from the fire and EMS about coming across the road from the EMS house when they have a call and they've got to work with their key to get the door open. There's access points throughout the building. We have a key entry code on the back door, which isn't probably the most secure thing in the world either. So looking into this and looking at the prices, I looked at the option of let's just do the whole building. There's 6 entry doors here. If we do the entire building, you're looking at around $11,000. I have emailed the Department of Revenue asking about the routes to recovery grant, because we did get our other ones covered already. They've accepted those, the Amazon ones. And I know that the front door would likely be covered by the grant. I'm not so sure about some of the other doors. I think these 2 passageways we would definitely get covered. The rest, the other 4, I think is questionable. I've emailed them. However, if we're putting the system in, so, you know, let's say around the $5,000 would get covered by the grant for sure. There's a possibility 6,000 wouldn't. I think likely it will, but I will not move forward with it until I get an answer from them. But either way, and I'll let any of the other department heads chime in, because the police uses a different access, 2 different access points. And just to have key fob access for this building would be wonderful for security reasons. These keys that we use, I mean, it does says on them that you can't duplicate them, but you know, people can do that. You know, we have employee turnover. We have a lot of, I won't say turnover, but there's a lot of people in the volunteer fire department, paid on call fire department. I think our building should definitely be a little bit more secure in this day and age. But ultimately, this helps us deal with the existing situation of COVID. And not to say outside of this, we also have had concerns in the past in our front office of certain customers that we get that call us and tell us they're coming, and we're not sure if we need to have a police officer come to the front desk, you know, before they get there, because we do get those customers too. So this would just add another level of security too. And we also have the municipal court in here. So I think this is a very good opportunity to take care of this.
John?
What are your plans? Obviously, it's gonna be electronic, potentially computer aided, and power goes out. What is the backup plan? I would tell you
Keys.
from experience, have keys to the doors, because we've had that happen where
Yep.
you can't get in.
We'd still have the keys,
Okay.
which doesn't take away the possibility of copying keys, right? But yes, the keyed entry would still be available. And maybe we'd limit the number of doors that happens on or something, but
Okay, thank you.
Mike?
We'll just expand on John. Do we have emergency power in this building?
yes. But not for everything.
Not for everything.
Not for the-
Backup generator just keeps HVAC running, very limited computer outlets running.
Who would be the administrator for it, and would if each employee had their own key fob, and then you could disable that key fob, or like, fob at any time, so you have better tracking of who's in the building or who was in the building?
Correct. So that Darren takes care of the keys right now, Public Works.
Okay.
That would continue, and right now the way it works is it's signed out. You know, they sign a piece of paper when they get a key. This is a computer system. It's literally you logging in and activating, deactivating keys, just like they do probably at a hotel.
Any new employee would have to go through Public
Yes.
Works, Darren?
Yeah.
Did anybody put any idea, like, I know that key fobs for your car are expensive, depending.
They're actually.
$45 for 10 fobs.
It's four.
I'm sorry.
$45 for 10 fobs.
So are
And
you,
the thing to program the fobs is roughly $88, and that's included in the first quote.
so are you planning to make employees accountable if they lose one, they pay for it and the rekeying, or how does that work? I mean.
Yeah, I mean,
you-
it certainly brings up another, we have that right now with our keys. I mean, that they're responsible for loss of keys.
Right, I
These
understand,
are-
but that cost isn't there.
well,
They're
it's
like for,
$4 It's $4.50 per card. The key fobs are
Okay.
$4.50.
Right now,
Gotcha.
to rekey this building, we're looking at about $1,300 just in keys.
John?
I think it's important, obviously, it's a public building, and looking at it, that's why you look at it, I don't know where the funding would be, but to me, this is important enough to take out of the fund balance. I mean, this is a one-time deal. As important as it is, I would like to see that with the understanding that any grant money available then would be given back, but And if you need that in form of motion, I'll make the motion that we move forward with it regardless of the grant or not, because I think it's such an important issue. Regardless, that we move forward it, using the money from one-time fund from the fund balance, unless you have other areas that you know, Nick, that you can get the money from for this project.
I'm sure we have that money available in the capital reserve.
Well, I'll make that motion that the money come from the capital reserve to do the full project at about 11,000, to do the whole building right the first time.
A second.
All right, we got a motion by Duffy, second by Horning to approve this project for the $11,000. Is that 11,000 even?
Around there, yeah.
Around.
I was gonna say the cost of the project, so not that all of a sudden it's over at 11,000, that, oh, we can't do
Yeah.
it. I mean, relatively close, unless it comes over significantly over, then you would have to come back to us.
Because we're going for a few other costs, like our crew has to run the Cat 6 cable from the server room to the doors, stuff like that.
Yeah, it's just not really a cost to us that way. Their labor is already in the budget.
Okay.
All right. Is there any other questions or comments on this item? All right. Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. All right. Moving down to closed session. Get a motion to go into closed session, please.
I'll make a motion to go into closed session for discussion of a personnel issue under Wisconsin State Statute 19.85 sub 1 sub C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. Item A, Lakeside Municipal Court staffing.
I got a second? I got a motion by Horn and a second by Will to go into closed session. Roll call, please.
Duffy.
Yes.
Horning.
Yes.
Streeter.
Yes.
Price.
Yes.
Will.
All right, we are in closed session. Thanks, everybody.